Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is teaching the disciples, and he is giving word to different ones on what to be taught. And of course, when the Sermon on the Mount, and a lot of things that come to our mind is when Moses went up to the mount and God gave him the commandments or the law. Today's lesson brings out, and God or Jesus plainly told the people he was teaching to that these laws come from God. Even though they were read to you by man, they come straight from God. They didn't come from anybody else. So that's kind of what the lesson will be like this morning, and it's the Beatitudes. We all familiar with the Beatitudes, but we'll get into that in a few minutes. But let's read a few verses of Scripture this morning, starting with Matthew 5:1. And seeing the multitudes, he went up into a mountain, and when he was set, his disciples came unto him, and he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt have lost its savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out and to be trodden under foot of men. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law, till all be fulfilled. Whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments, and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say unto you, that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven. Pretty plain talking there that Jesus passed on, So in reading this, have you ever read the Sermon on the Mount and asked yourself, how can I possibly live up to these standards? You ever ask yourself that? How can I possibly live up to these standards? Well, in physical things, coming up, Brother Wayne, my dad told us boys, there's no such thing as can't. Can't never could, or can't never will, And I was probably the worst out of the four of us that said, Daddy, I can't. It wasn't that I couldn't. Brother Frank, I didn't want to. I wanted Daddy to do it, or I wanted the older brother to do it, or I just didn't want to do it. But I tried to use the word I can't. Well, there's no such thing. Well, Jesus here, he begins and he is teaching and he's talking to the disciples here, and he starts off with blessed are. Blessed are. And we'll talk about these things of being blessed. So Jesus said he is teaching the people, and in Matthew he sets this scene from the Sermon on the Mount. But God had delivered Israel from Egypt or Egyptian slavery through his mighty acts, and later he gathered the people at Sinai. There he delivered the law to them through Moses. And that's what I was talking about a while ago. When Jesus was teaching, he let the people know that the law that Moses read to them and delivered them come from God. It didn't come from man. So people, when we are sitting around listening to teachings, preaching, conversations, whatever about God's kingdom, we got to be sure that it come from God and not come from man. And that's what Jesus, he pointed out here. Jesus was proclaiming and teaching the gospel of the kingdom. He was not delivering another law. They had already heard this law, nor was he abolishing the revelation that God had previously given to his people. But he was interpreting what they had already received in terms of how we ought to live in the kingdom of God. That's what he was doing. He was interpreting how we ought to live. Jesus was concerned with showing us that life in the kingdom is transformational. What is transformational or transforming? It's changing. It's being changed from one thing to another. It's being transformed. You know, paraphrasing a little bit here, it says, be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. By the renewing of your mind. So let's get into the Beatitudes a little bit. Jesus began, as I said here, identifying by saying, blessed people. The Beatitude. What is a Beatitude? It's from a Latin word meaning a state of blessedness. A state of blessedness. Jesus here, he announced and he taught the kinds of people who are blessed from God's perspective. That's where he started from. He taught and he told them what kind or what you would have to do to be blessed by God. So at the end of Deuteronomy, divine blessings were declared on the people who kept the law. All right, what does the end or the book of Revelations declare? Basically the same thing for us Christians. Those who keep the commandments of God will receive this, all throughout the Bible there. But the kinds of people called blessed are not what the world considers to be favored. Now, I'm sure everybody knows that. If you don't know that already, I guess you've just woke up, because we see it so prevalent in today's society. You know, we see where people are calling the Bible a fairy tale, this so-called false hope that you have. I could go on and on and on naming things that the world is calling Christians or talking about the Christians, but it's certainly not the people that the world considers to be favored. All right, the first beatitude, the poor in spirit. The poor in spirit. In Isaiah 60:1, it's meaning those who are humble and contrite. Isaiah 61, it says, arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. So that was the first beatitude there. All right, Jesus was announcing that the spiritual riches of God's kingdom are now made available to Jesus' disciples who may appear to have nothing. Now, people, let's don't twist this around and get this all confused up. God don't mean that you got to have nothing to be blessed. What is he talking about here? Well, again, I'll use myself as an example. When I was coming up as a kid, my dad taught us a lot of times, and he made a statement a lot of times. He said, son, when you get older, you'll learn in life, and you'll see the more stuff that someone has, the less of God they want. So what is wrong with having stuff is that we let that stuff come between us and God. If we have nothing, God's all we got. You know, now I've got my opinion about things, and you'll notice I said my opinion. We hear of the older folks talking about how people prayed all the time and, you know, God was on their heart all the time. They didn't have nothing else. They had to depend on God. They had to depend on God. Now, can we have riches and stuff and still live for God? Sure we can. Sure we can. But we have to be real careful about that, to not let those things come between us and God. And that's what he was talking about there, and that's what he was getting to. The second beatitude promises comfort for those who mourn. Isaiah 61, 2 and 3. Let's read 61. Did I say? I read the wrong verse a while ago. I read 60 and 1. Let me go back and read 61 and 1. Isaiah 61 and 1 said, "The Spirit of the Lord is come upon me, because the Lord hath anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. He hath sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to them that are bound." And then the second one there, it comes from Isaiah 61, 2 and 3, says, "To proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord, and the day of the vengeance of our God, to comfort all that mourn, to appoint unto them that mourn in Zion, to give unto them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he might be glorified." Notice in all of these things, all of these verses that we read and all the comments are made, all this is for what? To glorify God. To glorify God. What does the word glorify God mean? Give God credit. Give God praise. It's not our credit, it's not our doing, but it's God's doings there. So the third beatitude is talking about the meek. The meek, the ones that are humble and meekness. Psalms 37 and 9 states, "For evildoers shall be cut off, but those that wait upon the Lord shall inherit the earth." They that wait upon the Lord shall, a guarantee, inherit the earth. Now, people, that's a contract in writing. That is a contract in writing. You know, a lot of times we go and we buy things, and the salesman, he gives us a good pitch, and boy, it really sounds good until you look at him in the face, Brother Wayne, and says, "Can you put that in writing?" And then they begin to wiggle out of it, hum-haul around. You know what hum-haul means? But this right here, where it says shall, is a guarantee in writing. So the fourth beatitude, Jesus promised satisfaction for those who hunger and thirst after righteousness. Hunger and thirst after righteousness not only refers to one standing with God, but it also includes one standing with each other, with other people. Now, a lot of us, or a lot of people, we got this attitude that, well, if I do God wrong, if I break a deal with him, and first of all, God don't make deals, but their attitude is, I don't have to look at him every day. I don't have to see him every time I go to town or go to Walmart, but if I see Brother Wayne and I do him wrong, he's the first one I'll run into. People, we got it right backwards. God sees us all the time, 24/7, all the time. He should be the one we should worry about doing wrong or not doing right, you know. So, what is our standing between people? You know, I think it says something like this. You know, how can you say you love me that you've not seen and hate your brother that you have seen? Have I got that right, or did I get that backwards? I got that right, I think. Yeah. But the fifth, Jesus announced, the merciful shall obtain mercy. The merciful are those with a generous spirit. They give and forgive. Not only does a merciful give, but they also forgive. You know, we use the statement, Brother Bill, I forgive you, but I'll never forget it. What'd God say? God said when he forgives you, Brother Roy, he throws it in the sea of forgetfulness and never remembers it again. So not only give, but forgive. Proverbs 19:7 says, whosoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord and will be repaid in full. Paraphrasing there just a little bit, but will be repaid in full. Whosoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord. When you lend something, that means you're going to get paid back, right? Or you should, or you're supposed to. But God says when you lend to him, you will get paid back in full. Paid back in full there. The pure in heart shall see God. The pure in heart shall see God. Worldly people chase what they see with their physical eye. But the pure in heart will see the one God who is described as invisible. The pure in heart. The ability to see God also means that we are near God. The ability to see God means we are near God. Now, I don't know about you. There's some of you in here younger than I am, some of you older than I am. We won't get into that. So we'll just say I'm right in between. There's things now, Brother Wayne, that I have to be pretty close to see it. Huh? Hello? Huh? Do we see God? Are we near enough to God to see him? That's what he's talking about right here. Worldly wisdom, selfish ambition produces strife because people seize what they want and fight over what they do not have. Let me say that again. Worldly wisdom or selfish ambition, it produces strife. What is strife? Never satisfied, always in turmoil, always whatever, never content. I don't mean being content spiritually. We should never be content spiritually. We should always want more.
What did you say last week? How much money will make you satisfied?
A little bit more. That's right.
That's just the way people are.
Exactly. So, if we're always in strife and we always just something's not right, let's take a look at ourselves and see if it's selfish ambition. Now, we've got to have so much ambition. We know that. but are we putting it ahead of God? We're putting it ahead of God. Are we always fighting over what we don't have? You know, let's take that in considerations. Jesus also announced that a blessing would be on those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. People, as I mentioned a while ago, I have never seen in my life or heard how Christians are being more persecuted now than ever in my lifetime. Maybe not as much physically, and there are places they're persecuted physically, but verbally persecuted. We have leaders in Washington, our own great nation of the United States of America, that has made statements that the Christian people is what's wrong with this nation, that they need to be put in another room by themselves. And I think I've made this statement before, but when I first heard that, thought come to my mind, oh, buddy, if you just hold on a little while, we're going to be in another room. And I'm looking forward to it, Brother Wayne. I'm looking forward to it. So it goes on here, gets into the godly influence. Jesus said, or he's talking here, in other words, about the salt of the earth. Now, people, I've been doing a little bit of reading in the last few months about salt. I knew salt was essential for things, but I didn't really realize how important salt is. Salt. He says you're the salt of the earth. So let's look at a few things right here. The recipients of the Beatitudes. Jesus taught that these people are the salt of the earth and the light of the world. Let's look at some functions of salt other than addition to flavor. Now, I don't know about you, but which I don't want too much, but I have got to have a little bit of salt on my food. It just does not taste right without it. But salt was used in the Old Testament. It was used in sacrifices. In Leviticus 12 and 13, why was it used in sacrifices? Because salt is considered necessary for purification, to purify, to cleanse, to preserve. You could just go on and on and on. This sounds real cruel, and as a kid, I about had to turn my head from it. But back in the day, we had a lot of trouble with cattle getting what we call pink eye. It was nothing but an infection that got in their eyes, Brother Wayne, for sticking their heads down through weeds and bushes to get the grass underneath. The best cure for that cow, for that animal, I'll guarantee you in one day, my dad and my uncle would catch those cows, put them in a head catch or whatever, and take a handful of salt, Brother Wayne, and rub in those eyes. For about 15 minutes, that poor animal suffered. But the next day, nothing wrong with that eye. It purified it. It cleaned it out. That's the only way I had to keep it, Brother Ricky. Salt is an essential mineral that every living body that God created has to have. Wild animals will travel as far as they have to find something natural in the woods that's got salt in it if they can't find it any other way. It is a necessity. And we've heard for years, and I won't get into this argument, I'm just going to tell you what I've read and what I've heard doctors say lately. Salt to kill you, salt to kill you, salt will kill you. Now they're saying, eat more salt. I went for a checkup a few weeks ago, and I got a call the next few days, and said, Mr. Kelly, we need you to come back in and take some more blood work. Your chlorides are low in your body. What do I need to do? Drink more liquids. So I Googled it on interweb. Yeah, I can Google things, believe it or not. I'm learning. Never get too old to learn. What do I need to do to get my chlorides up? First article at Google said drink more liquids and eat more salt. Wilma's mother got sick. She couldn't stand for you to even act like she was going to touch her. She'd go to screaming and hollering, it hurt. She'd get sick when she smelled food, Brother Wayne. She'd take a bite and she'd get sick. Finally, another doctor looked at her chart and said, well, no wonder. She got no salt in her body. Less than 30 days after putting salt back in her food, she was okay. Salt is a necessity. Now, I've talked about the necessities of salt in about every living body that has to have salt, in one way or another. It's one of the basic necessities of life. But when salt loses its power, or how salt loses its power, is by it becoming defiled or being mixed with other minerals. Okay, let's back up now and let's be sure we understand this spiritually. Jesus said, ye are the salt of the earth. We named a few things that what salt does: purifies, preserves, even sterilizes, cleanses, whatever. So if we're the salt of the earth, when I say we, I'm talking about Christians, we are the main thing that God has created to save the world. The world is outside people that don't believe in Jesus. But the reason we can't save the world like we should, we've got a few other minerals mixed in, Brother Wayne. And I said we. I didn't say you. I said we. Are we pure salt? Spiritually. If we're not, if we're mixed, it says when it's mixed with other minerals, it is useless. It's useless. Exactly, Brother Ricky. That's my point. And back, Brother Ricky, when you're talking about that old meat, the old salt box we had, Mom and Dad would smoke those old hams off of those hogs, and boy, they'd put a layer of salt in that old box and put that ham in there and cover it with salt. And I remember one time, something happened. The bag of salt Daddy opened had something contaminated in it. Daddy cleaned the whole salt box out. Mama said, you going to waste all that salt? He said, I sure am. I'm not going to take a chance on this meat ruining. So people, we can't afford, if we're the salt of the earth, as Jesus said, we cannot afford for one speck, Sister Harris, of contamination to be in our spiritual life, because it will ruin everything we come in contact with. We will be of no good. We've got to get it all cleaned out and start over. So I hope I've put the emphasis on the salt there, how it's needed and what it's for there. Jesus was telling his disciples that if they followed him, they would become what the world needs. However, if they diluted his teachings, an example with the ways of the world, they would not be successful. People, we cannot afford to dilute it down. I've made this statement before, and I'll make it again. Thank God for medicine, Brother Wayne. I don't take much of it, but when I need some, I want the best. But just about all medicines, Sister Margaret, that I've ever swallowed that done any good, they were awful. They tasted bad. I had to really struggle to get them down. Just go on and swallow it. You can't hold it in your mouth. Just go on and swallow it. People, the things in this book that will keep us separated, most of the time, Brother Wayne, it's hard to swallow. But when we swallow it and keep it down, it's of all effect. That's the way it is. But he said they would not be successful if they didn't follow his ways. They may receive the world's approval, but they would not be able to fulfill their purpose as his disciple. People, who do we want to be satisfied? God or the world? You know, then he talks about the light of the world. Jesus described his followers as the light of the world. He said if we as disciples of Jesus obey his word, we will show the world the better way of life. Better way of life. Darkness cannot comprehend light. It cannot do it. I've used this example before, but if you could make this room right here so dark that you couldn't even see your hand in front of your face, and you put the light the size of a ballpoint pen up on that wall, you could see it. I don't care where you was at in this room, you could see that light. People, are we a light of the world? Does people know, does the outside people, the world people, the worldly people, do they know us when they see us? And I'm talking about Christians. Are we that light? He says we would be. Talking about the light of the world there. The way Jesus calls us to live makes us stand out in the world. He is not talking about religious boasting. He condemns that. Jesus is saying as we live according to his teaching in his name, our lives will point others to God. Our lives will point others to God. I got about 3 minutes here. God's word is eternal. Jesus' mission was not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. People, we've heard that enough, and we know that. Jesus reminded his audience that they received the law from God. I mentioned that a while ago there. God is eternal. So is his word. It says, the word of our God shall stand forever. Jesus emphasizing this point, saying not one jot or tittle will pass from the law until all is fulfilled. That's in Matthew 5:18. And the word fulfill there means to come into being. Come into being. It will become plain throughout the remainder of Jesus' teaching that what he meant here. He describes a way of being in his kingdom that points to a different kind of humanity altogether. It is a way of life where righteous behavior flows from a righteous heart. Righteous behavior flows from a righteous heart. Did you get that? Let me say it one more time. A righteous behavior flows from a righteous heart. Truly, the truly righteous heart will produce righteous living. Jesus will fulfill the law through the creation of a people whose hearts and lives were sincerely devoted to God. People, how devoted are we? What is our character? What kind of influence are we making on the world? Are we the salt? Are we a light?